Hello YouTube, Sidekick here with some news from the front. By that I mean news from our ongoing The Balloon Goes Up campaign. If you haven't heard about it, you should go back and watch some of the earlier videos. In this campaign we're going to war with the Warsaw Pact. It's 1982 and the balloon really has gone up. Long columns of Warsaw Pact vehicles have crossed the border. NATO screening forces have been engaging the enemy, giving time to organize a defense. Now, we're a squadron of A-10s based in the UK, but we're deployed forward in the Federal Republic of Germany. Our job is to do whatever we need to do to help supported ground troops in our area of operations delay, stop, and eventually destroy the enemy. Right now, that enemy consists of a motor rifle division advancing on two separate axes, one of which is aimed squarely at us. And by us, I mean the 1st Brigade of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Division. The brigade is tasked with setting up a main line of defense along the Snake River. They've thrown a combined arms battle group forward to establish covering force blocking positions at choke points in the hills on the other side of the Snake. We're supporting this brigade, commanded by callsign Hitman. 3 combat teams manning the blocking positions are known as callsign Buckshot, Cleaver, and callsign Demon. These combat teams are going to engage the forward enemy elements, destroy what they can, and make the rest deploy and prepare to assault. Our job is to find, delay, and destroy the follow-on elements of that assaulting regiment, to deny the forward elements the support they need to attack the covering force effectively, and so continuing to delay the assault and giving the rest of the brigade time to get organized. Hitman is particularly concerned about artillery units. He knows the Soviets use a lot of artillery, and he's worried that it will deploy where he can't hit it, so we are his counter-battery fire. Now, of course, we're not the only air elements out there. We're supported by other aircraft, particularly Wild Weasels and Ravens, who are focused on degrading the integrated air defenses that we face. And of course, we also have dedicated combat air patrol aircraft in the air all the time to keep the Warsaw Pact air out of our hair and off the ground forces' backs. So, our targets in these missions are enemy artillery units, especially deployed artillery, and enemy command and control elements. But the threat that we're facing is that integrated air defense system. It includes divisional level mid-range SAMs, SA-6 and SA-8s, regimental level SHORADs, SA-9s and Shilkas, and as well as battalion level air defense, which is mostly man-pads and some small arms. Now, we know a lot about that threat, though. We've practiced against it. We know how the Soviets will probably deploy it. Now, if the Weasels do their job, the SA-6s and SA-8s will either be destroyed, suppressed, or delayed. The regimental SHORADs is dangerous, but it's not that numerous, and it can't be everywhere. If we can find it, we can kill it. Once it's down, we can focus on the targets that Hitman has given us. The biggest thing to remember is that no matter how many Warsaw Pact vehicles we take out, there are going to be more coming over the hill soon. So we need to preserve ourselves and our aircraft to fight another day. As we like to say, kill ratio is king. Now, it's a challenge, but we're ready. We've been training for this. We know the area of operations like our backyard. We know where the enemy will come from. We know what he will want to do and how he will want to do it. Our weapons, the trusty Hawgs, have been designed specifically to meet this challenge. We've practiced getting the most out of them. We know how to find the enemy, identify the threats and the high-value targets. We've practiced separating one from the other so that we can do what Hogs do best, and that is feed on unprotected enemy vehicles. Now, if you want to join us, we're always looking for willing pilots. Now, you have to be prepared to train and fight in a true Cold War as a true Cold War Hog driver, though. Now, stay tuned if you want to know what I mean. So the time for training is over. The balloon is going up. Let's see how we do. By the way, in this mission, I am Sunray, which is basically a pilot assigned to the Airborne Air Coordination Center. My job is to be the eye in the sky that helps the mission commander get the job done.
Hello, Robert here. I was flying as Crossbow 1 in this mission, and I was also the mission commander. Outside of this project, I rarely fly multiplayer in DCS. But the biggest difference for me is that you actually have to use teamwork to accomplish given mission objectives against a challenging enemy. And it gets even more challenging when you have to coordinate 4 flights of 2 aircraft each as mission commander.
So, as you can see, I think we're trying and succeeding at providing an experience that's different than DCS multiplayer usually is. So, as you can see, Robert's got his flight out and orbiting around the bullseye, trying to take a look at the situation on the ground so he can decide what to do. Now, what he finds through me and from Hitman is that Task Force Buckshot is under assault by the forward security elements of the Motor Rifle Regiment. They're pretty confident they can handle those forward security elements. It's a reinforced company that's going to be followed up by the rest of the battalion, but between their tanks and their tows and their helicopters, they're making pretty good mincemeat out of that group. What Hitman is concerned about is the follow-on elements that are coming down behind that. So Robert takes a quick look at the ground, decides he's going to send everybody down east of the town we call Chiclets, and they're going to be hanging out behind that big hill in the bottom center of the screen, which will give them some protection from the SA-6s, and their job is to find those other follow-on elements, the regimental headquarters and the artillery, and see what they can do about it. So, first one to go have a look is call sign Saber, having come down east of Chiclets. He's now looking at that draw that goes back up into the mountains, trying to locate the regimental headquarters somewhere in there. Now, once the headquarters is located, the guys know that what they'll be doing is trying to separate out the air defense assets. There are 4 Shilkas and 4 Strellas they need to worry about. Once they find them, they're going to take them out with Mavericks, and you're going to see that call sign Hammer has found a likely target. Obviously, it's up a little bit to the right of where he thought it was, and he is engaging with a Maverick. Meanwhile, call sign Saber, having taken the time to take a good look, has also identified the same group of air defense vehicles at the front of the enemy RHQ, and so he comes in with a Maverick. Turns away without being too dramatic about it. He's far enough away he can use the time to get a really good look at the enemy and look for the other elements that he's interested in. Meanwhile, while Saber's taking a shot, Hammer is cycled back around, coming in again. As you can see, he's a bit farther north this time, and he's looking for that front forward air defense unit. He's going to drop his last Maverick on them. And as you can see, it is successful. But there's something you want to note. Just a sec, let me stop it here. And then let's turn around and rewind the frame for a sec. Notice that air defense unit consists of 4 vehicles, but the rear 2 vehicles are trucks. So the guys have already gotten that whittled down. They've taken out 2 Strellas. That's a Shilka gone. There's only 1 Shilka left in that air defense detachment. And that's what we mean by fighting the Hog way. And now it's time for another one of the elements to get involved, the slingshot. They've been hanging out at a fairly high altitude. You can see, if you're looking carefully, you can see the previous Maverick impacting. Obviously, slingshot's lining up on that, and he too fires a Maverick at that air defense unit. So at this point, things are going pretty well, until call sign Hitman calls through Sunray, that's me, and lets us know that, call sign Buckshot has pretty much defeated the forward security element, but that means the advanced guard is also starting to deploy and prepare for an assault, which is good. That's what he wanted. But he realizes that also means that the headquarters is probably deploying its artillery battalion to support that assault, and that's going to be a problem. So the Hawgs target now really is a priority of finding any artillery that's deploying and doing something about it before they start deluging call sign Buckshot with 122 millimeter calling cards. So the Hawgs are back out looking for that artillery unit. It looks like it's near the northern end of Chiclets and off to the west. Here's call sign Hammer going in. This time Hammer 1, having fired all his Mavericks, is now playing number 2 in his flight, as his actual number 2 is firing off some of his Mavericks, looking for the right kinds of targets. This is one of the things that the Hawg drivers need to learn, is how to operate as a 2-ship to get the most out of all of the weapons in the two-ship in a coordinated way. It's part of the thing that's a little bit different about flying in this scenario. And now here we see a little bit higher level view. This is call sign Saber looking for that artillery unit, and he thinks he's found it. You can see it's he's pointed pretty much at it directly now. Now the point, though, is that having that deployed artillery at this point brings a couple of other challenges. Well, the first is that the challenge is brought by the fact that a lot of the Mavericks are gone, so they're not going to be able to engage that artillery with standoff weapons. And the second problem is, as soon as the enemy starts deploying, that's code for the fact that they're probably popping out their man-pads detachments. Remember, there are 9 man-pads in every motor rifle battalion. There's 3 in the headquarters as well. And so now the Hogs have to be very careful about getting too low and too close, because those man-pads are not easy to spot. So you can see that callsign Saber had to go with some ranging rounds and basically just to take a look at where the artillery was, and he has found the artillery unit. So callsign Crossbow has now joined the fight, and Robert is launching one of his Mavericks, he still has a couple, into that area to try and take out one of the artillery units. And as you can see in that, he is successful. You can also see that back behind the artillery units are the remains of that last air defense unit, which has now been completely degraded. And you can also see that there are some actual rockets landing in the area of the artillery. So obviously somebody else is doing a good job of targeting them. Let's take a look and see who that was. It's Hammer 2. Hammer 2, this will show you Hammer 2's run. He's coming in. You can see the artillery units there just on the left-hand side of the screen. There's Crossbow's Maverick landing, and there he is launching his rockets. Nice controlled rocket run. Now the problem, though, for Hammer is that he's getting close to the area of the map that we call Fifth Avenue. And Fifth Avenue is absolutely lousy with enemy ground units, which means there's man-pads about, as he is about to find out. And if you look from the upper right there on the ridge, you can see that a man-pad has actually already launched on him. He's flaring madly to try and avoid it. And he manages to do that. But now he's got a problem in that his egress route is out over that valley. That valley has lots of enemy deployed units in it, and they probably have man-pads with them. So now his task is to get out of town as low and as fast as possible. Really wants to stay on those flares, though. Now, the thing about man-pads that we've found is that, A, they're fast, and they're not very long range, but that just means you don't get a lot of time to react. The other fact of life when you fly an A-10 is that often the shot that gets you comes from behind, because that's the most attractive target that you can present. And you can see here comes trouble behind Hammer 2. And so we have our first casualty. Now, Hammer 2 is still in flying condition. This is, again, one of the beauties of the Hawg. It can take a hit and keep going. Now, while Hammer 2 and Saber are focusing on the artillery, Crossbow is using the rest of his Mavericks to try and find and destroy the remaining air defense units. Don't forget, there's still some Shilkas and Strelas hanging around. They're coming up behind. Crossbow 1 is taking a shot. Crossbow 2 also takes a shot and breaks to the right. Now, just in case you thought it was safe to go back in the water, you're going to take a look again behind Crossbow 2 and find that, well, there still is a SA-9 alive out there, and it has launched a missile after him, but thankfully, because of his flares and because the A-10 is a pretty low IR signature, that missile is defeated. Alright, while all that's going on, Saber 2 is coming in, looking at the target that's been helpfully marked by Saber 1, who's out of Mavericks, if you remember. And if you watch carefully, you will see the Maverick trails from Crossbow going in, and also the SA-9 smoke trail coming out, as Saber 2 finds a target for his Maverick and takes a shot at that air defense unit. And not to be left out, Hammer 2, sporting the scars from his encounter with the man-pads, also uses his last Maverick on that air defense concentration. Okay, so now call sign Crossbow is coming in to take a look. Things are going pretty well at this point. We've written down 6, maybe 7 of the principal air defense units in that motorized rifle regiment. But Hitman's getting pretty insistent that he's got an artillery problem, and he'd really like us to be solving that for him. So, Crossbow's taking a look at the scene, trying to figure out where the artillery is and exactly what's going on. And also to assess where the threats are going to be coming from now. And he's going to find out in a minute that the threats really are the man-pads deaths, and that if you get up even a little bit too high, you can make yourself a target for them. Watch to the right, and you'll see this telltale smoke sign of a man-pads coming up at him from down in 5th Avenue, and it's time for him to get away. He probably doesn't even see it coming because he didn't flare, but it was a near-run thing. So, the problem that is to be solved is that we have to take out that artillery concentration. There's every sign that more batteries are moving up, so we really do need to do something about it. But we're going to have to be mindful that we've got a lot of short-range man-pads around, and there still may be at least one air defense unit. It's probably a Shilka, but it's time for the Hogs to really get busy. So Hammer 1 decides that enough is enough. He's going to go in and do the Hog thing on this artillery battery. And so it's rockets, and then it's guns, and then, well, Hammer 1, I don't know how else to describe it, but then to say, well, he kind of loses it. He's obviously had enough of this chipping away at the edge. He turns away, gets attacked by Estrella, and decides, you know what, he's going to do something about that. In typical Hog fashion. And then he's off to fight another day. Anyone who says the Hog is boring has obviously never flown this mission. Alright, well now flying in behind Hammer, you can see Saber 2. The Saber 2 has also decided that enough's enough. It's time to get serious and get all Hog on the enemy. So you can see the effects of Hammer 1, and you can also see his engagement with the Estrella there going on in front of Saber 2. As Saber 2 lines up on the artillery unit to give it the Hog treatment. First we'll give it some rockets. We'll give it some more rockets. Okay, at this point the mission commander calls everybody back out. Back to the east, back behind that big hill where they can be safe, have a little bit of a check on their weapons inventory particularly. Discovers he's still got Slingshot armed with Maverick, so he sends them in at a high level. Slingshot 1 fires a Maverick at that rear air defense unit, the Strela that took on Hammer, and Slingshot 2 fires his at the forward artillery position. And that pretty much expends the long-range standoff weapons for the flight. So now it's time to figure out what we're going to do about that artillery unit, and we do need to do that because Hitman is starting to get reasonably insistent that that's the support that he really needs from the Hogs. Now, there is actually one more Maverick in the flight, and that's Crossbow 2, but Crossbow 2 has managed to get himself separated from Crossbow 1 at some point. So while Crossbow 1 is trying to organize the rest of the attack, Crossbow 2 has gone freelance. Now he's got one more Maverick, and he correctly identifies the artillery as the target for that Maverick, and he lines it up. Unfortunately, at that point, he decides to turn the wrong way, and he breaks down over 5th Avenue and right into a concentration of man-pads that he never even sees coming. And this is probably going to end badly for Crossbow 2. In fact, Crossbow 2 is going to end up being our first casualty of the day, so that is a strike 1, and it points out the real importance of knowing where you are over the ground and where the enemy is. Crossbow 2 was using a standoff weapon, seemed to be in a pretty safe place, but unfortunately he wasn't. He's going to get out alive, but his A-10 is not. So it's time for a little bit of a reassessment. Everybody pulls back again, gets behind the big hill, gets some altitude where they can see the area of operations and make a plan. Basically out of standoff weapons now, so it's going to have to be real Hog action. And here's Saber 1, the sniper of the group, coming in to take his first gun run.
Hey everyone. Saber 1 here. Flying the Balloon Goes Up mission was a big change from what I normally fly in DCS. Usually I fly solo in the Vigan, ground attacking undefended targets and then getting into dogfights on the way home. So flying a coordinated mission in the A-10 against a heavily defended convoy in a flight of 8 planes was a different challenge for me. Leading the first mission was something new for me as well and a lot of fun. The constant communication and organisation with the flight is a big difference from what I normally do in DCS. It required a lot of coordination, patience and strategic planning. Overall, this mission was a refreshing change and felt much closer to a real military exercise than anything I've done before in DCS.
And you can see Saber 1 coming in for a second run here, getting a little bit closer now. He's going after the artillery. That's what Hitman wants us to do, being very economical with his rounds. And he's going to take a break pretty soon to avoid getting too close. And wisely, he's going to the left to stay away from the man-pad's danger zone. And he's getting down low and getting the ridge between him and the other air defense units. But you can see in the background that that artillery is in action, and Hitman is insistent that something be done. So Hammer steps up to the plate.
Hello, I'm Element. I flew as Hammer 1. I had a really fun time flying this mission that Sidekick put together. What I really liked about the scenario and what sets it apart from the usual DCS multiplayer experience is the emphasis that it puts on learning the terrain and knowing your enemy. You're really rewarded for having a very clear picture in your head of the different areas of the battlefield, so you can communicate with your wingman and mission commander very quickly and efficiently, as well as knowing the composition of the enemy force that you're facing, which helps you plan which targets to prioritize. You really need to have done your homework to succeed, and you can't just wing it and hope for the best. It was great fun to fly, and I'd really recommend that you give it a go.
So as you can see, Hammerflight decided that with air defense to the left and man-pads to the right, the appropriate thing to do would be fly right over the target, which worked out pretty well for Hammer 1 on that pass. But flying a Hawg is a team sport, as they say, so Hammer 2 is right behind Hammer 1 on this run. Hammer 2 is still sporting his little cosmetic damage there that was caused by his run-in with the man-pads. But that isn't stopping him from continuing to contribute. Now, the Hammer 2 is lucky in that there's only a single Shilka left defending this artillery position, and that Shilka is going to be pretty occupied with trying to do something about Hammer 1. So Hammer 2, actually, it's a nice clear shot at the artillery. This is another reason why you want to play this as a team sport. It doesn't make it any less spicy, but Hammer 2 basically gets away without really any difficulty after a nice low and effective run over top of that artillery position. You can see in the background that the Hogs are having an effect. And meanwhile, back at altitude, it appears the Slingshot 1 still does have at least one Maverick.
Hi, I'm Nick, and I was pilot of Slingshot 1 in this LiveX. While I don't have quite as much time as others do in DCS multiplayer, I can definitely say that flying in a balloon goes up scenario is a very different experience. Instead of random pilots all trying to be the hero of the war, you have a team of like-minded pilots working together to achieve the mission goal. This is your team, who you've spent time practicing with, building up tactics and ideas together, and watching others do the same in their practice sessions. Each LiveX is built to increase in both challenge and pressure, often with additional surprises or objectives to keep you on your toes. Being part of a flight of 8 A-10s lifting off to turn the tide of war and protect your troops on the ground is initially daunting, but extremely rewarding. The LiveXs require planning, communication, and coordination to be successful, and it all culminates in a thrilling flight that tests your flying and problem solving until End X is called.
And so with that, Slingshot 1 has launched the last of the Mavericks available to the Hogs, hopefully at the air defense det that's bringing up the rear of the regimental headquarters group. Meanwhile, closer to the action, Saber 2 has seen what Hammer was able to accomplish and decides maybe it's time to get his Hawg on. So he decides to make a pass over the deployed artillery position. As you can see now, there's more than one battery already in place. There's probably a third one coming up behind, so all the more important for the Hogs to do some damage here, which is what Saber 2 is definitely setting out to do. As you can see, he's having an effect, but also, as you can see, he gets hit by one man-pads, gets hit by his second man-pads, and then he runs afoul of the Shilka. So Sabre 2's war is probably over for the day, although he is going to try very hard to get that Hawg home. So we're not up to Strike 2 yet, but we are running out of aircraft, of serviceable aircraft, I think. But speaking of serviceable aircraft, here comes Sabre 1, taking another sniping run at that same artillery position. He's just squeezing off the rounds a little bit at a time, trying to make every round count. He's even slowing down to try and get better aim. But now he realizes it's time to flare and to get out of there because he's getting a little bit too close to the weapon's effect zones for his own comfort. And in fact, he runs afoul of the man-pads threat as well. But like so many of the other Hogs, he survives the one hit and stays in the air and decides to stay in the fight. And speaking of staying in the fight, here's Hammer 2, having flown around Central Park with Hammer 1. They're lining up to make another pass on the artillery position. You can see that Hammer 1's out in front and is already attracting some serious attention from the man-pads threat. But undeterred, Hammer 2 presses home the assault on the artillery position. Now this is what it looks like from Hammer 1's perspective. And he had led a charmed life until now, but this time he falls afoul of the Shilka. And that's probably going to be it for him today, if he wants to live to fight another day. So he'll be taking his jet home in that condition. And now it's back to Sabre 1. Having gone off and taken a look at the damage and felt that he was still flyable, he is still in the fight. This time he's up a little higher, trying to get a good look at where those air defense assets are, working very hard to write them down so that we can keep attacking that artillery battery. He takes some shots at the Shilka. Sniping a Shilka from range is a skill that takes some work. He's not doing too badly at it. But then he decides to make his break just a little bit too late. And he gets nailed by the Shilka. And that is going to be Strike 2 and the end of the exercise. So despite that the exercise ended with Strike 2, I think everybody who participated felt like that was a very successful exercise. I'm not sure that there are any of the aircraft that got home without a scar or two, though. Going to be a lot of crew chiefs pulling some long faces when these fellows get home. Now, if you think this looked like fun, and it definitely is, there's always more room in these live X's for more. We can run more exercises if there's more people who want the training. If you do come and get the training, you will also be eligible for a drawing for an F4E module from Heatblur. So drop by my Discord, get the details, and join us the next time the balloon goes up. For now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.